everybody at SIB. Happy Wednesday. I am super excited. I have Vicki LaRose here. Vicki LaRose is the CEO and founder of Civil Design, Inc. CDI is an engineering firm here in St. Louis, Missouri, where we are based right now. And she has had such great success with this business. She built it from the basement now to a proper building with a lot of employees. And it's also one of the largest women-owned businesses in St. Louis. So, Vicki, welcome to SIB.
Well, thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, except for the rain.
I know. It's raining a lot here. It's a very common spring thing,
yes.
But yeah, it's we have the positivity, we have the radiant light here, so our morning's going well here. So fill us in about your career. Kind of tell us about where you started and how you ended up with one of the largest women-owned businesses in St. Louis.
It's kind of strange. It was not by design per se. My parents just told me that you had to go to college, but we didn't quite know what that was, even though I was the third of, there's four of us, but I was the third one. So you'd think by then they would have it figured out. But,
right.
I had no idea what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. I just knew I was good in math and science, and I overheard one of my classmates say that he was going to be an engineer because it was math and science, and I said, well, I guess I like math and science. So I went to a junior college, and I signed up for intro to engineering, and I thought I was set. And then he goes, so what kind of engineer you want to be? And I'm like, are you kidding me? There's more than one?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I thought we just drove trains. You know? But then I just found my way into civil, and I loved it. And then I had to, that was still in Wisconsin. And my sister went to Greenville College, and so I came down south here for many years, just following her down here. And then I walked on the campus of SIU Edwardsville and said, "This is my college."
Aww.
Yeah, it's out in the rural. I had to walk a half mile to school every day, and I loved it. You know, that way I can tell my kids I had to walk.
Right. You can tell. You can actually tell that story now, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So then I just fell in love with that, and my senior year I started trying to figure out where I wanted to get my first career, and I ended up at a major engineering firm, Swerdrup. It's now Jacobs Engineering, and I was there for about 10 years, and one of my coworkers kept poking me and said, hey, I think you should start your own business. And I asked him many years later, and I said, why did you do that? Because I'm like, I thought he wanted to come work for me, but he ended up retiring before I started.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that wasn't the reason.
Right.
So then he just saw it in me, and luckily he did, because back in the 90s, there was not a lot of women-owned firms, and any time that there's federal money involved in a transportation project or any I guess, infrastructure project, there's federal money and there's set-asides, and you have to give part of that money away. And we said, and there wasn't a whole lot of quality firms, and I said, well, at least we can do it quality and not have to give it back. There was a few times that we had to, when I was coming up, we'd have to give their plans back, and we just did it ourselves, and we did it because it wasn't right. So I said, well, I will at least provide quality, and that's kind of how I ended up where I was, except for I went to the engineers club, and everybody there had a degree from Rolla, and I didn't even know what Rolla, Missouri S&T was. Yeah. So I thought, I better so I got my master's from there, so I was accepted into the engineering world, because at that time SIU Edwardsville wasn't a good engineering school, but now it's great. I mean, we have quite a few of our team members come from there. So
yeah. I have family that are at engineering there and at Missouri S&T as well.
Yeah, so it's all good. We have SLU, we have WashU, we have UMSL. I mean, we have all sorts. I mean, that's what makes our company really great, because we have a lot of, not only diversified in sex or race or anything, we have diversified in colleges as well. So.
And that's great too.
Yes.
And I love hearing people's backstories, because it's just, for me, it's interesting, how someone started to how they got to where they are. Sometimes they just knew from the beginning. Sometimes they had no idea. It was just someone kind of pushing them kind of towards entrepreneurship.
Right.
So
my dad was an entrepreneur. He had his own. I always drive people crazy because he said he was a pharmacist by son. He sells drugs for a living. But I always make people laugh about that. So he had that, and then my husband's side, also his parents had their own business too. So I think it was both in us in that ways, because he ended up joining our company 7 years in. He kind of kept it stable, so we had 2 kids at the time, and then we had our third, so we had to have a steady income.
So how is that working with a husband, you know, in your business? Because I know a lot of people that can work great and sometimes not so well. How has that been for you guys?
I'd say 95% of the time it's been really good.
Awesome.
The times that when he was more of a project manager and I had to, you know, he that's not his cup of tea, but we needed him to do it, but yet he wasn't doing it to the extent that we needed him to. So how do you have that conversation? Or, you know, so it's, but we've worked through that, and now he's takes care of most of the money side, so I don't have to worry about any of that. So you can't, I know what we make, I don't know where it all goes because I don't have to, because I can trust him. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. And sometimes that trust is just, it is one of the most valuable things in a business, and knowing that you can trust someone to really handle that too. I mean, I can't imagine how those tricky conversations go. What advice do you have for people who maybe do have their partner involved, or maybe another family member who's involved in their business? How do you recommend they make that work?
That's interesting. We haven't done it always so well. I think the best thing about Dennis and I, when we checked ourselves at the door, it was never when as soon as we walked into the office, it was at first it was two engineers, so it wasn't husband wife. We checked that relationship at the door. Obviously it came in handy when something was wrong with the kids. You can run over there and say, hey, who's going to get the kids today? So I think it's that matter of respect, and we each knew where our jobs were. It's gotten a little trickier as we grow to figure out where each of us, because we're engineers first, so now we're running this business and we're not quite sure where we both fit, and we've been exploring that the last few years of figuring out what his role is and what mine is. So I think defining those roles and I think check the relationship at the door. I mean, and just both of you have to. I think he did a very good job, and everybody credits our culture because of me, but it was what I did, and then he brought the backside, and he was so quiet that nobody really knew that he brought part of the culture too. So it's kind of funny.
It's like a yin yang.
Yeah, it
full
was
balance,
so much. Yeah, so much so. Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Well, and going back, just so people maybe who don't know about engineering, what is civil engineering? Fill us in, kind of a layman's terms. What do you do in your field?
So we're pretty much anything infrastructure. So if you flush your toilet, we take that dirty water away. You turn on the faucet. We bring the clean water into your house. Well, our stop's 5 feet outside a building, a commercial building, and the home we stop at the street. And
interesting.
Then the rest of it is the homeowners. So that's how we deal with water. And then we, you know, I'm sure you all used your roads and bridges on the way here. We designed those and to get you here. And then, like I said, 5 feet outside a building. So we do all the sidewalks, the parking lots. We bring the utilities in to 5 feet beside the building. And then we also have this other group that's infrastructure analytics, which is a lot of data-driven stuff. So cities and utilities can make intelligent decisions on data now because we can get so much data. You know, so they can say if a water main is leaking by how much water, you have that data. So that whole group I love it because it's not the only, but they bring innovation into engineering because they've been building roads since the Roman days, you know, so we all know how to build roads, but how to do it better, smarter, and that data helps us do that.
And that's the challenge. You know, that's kind of what you're put up against every day.
There's also the foundations and soils, but we don't do that, but that's also part of civil engineering. So
I feel like that's just like a whole other, there's a lot that can go wrong with foundation. You know,
we have not done that.
All right, so I want to kind of go back. So you started this business, obviously as an engineer.
Yes.
How has that been? We were talking about it a little bit beforehand, kind of making that transition from engineer to a businesswoman. How do you kind of blend the two different, really, fields of work and make it a successful business?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we were talking about that too before. Now, all of our young engineers, if they have an elective, I encourage them to go take a business class or just something, because every day you're dealing with money and figuring all that out. And the first thing I did when we used SCORE, which is the Small Business Association, we went to a couple of their classes, and the first thing they told us to get a good lawyer, get a good accounting, and a good bank. And we did those things and then I kind of took classes at night to figure out how to read a balance sheet and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I had to go back and figure out what I didn't know. And then go from there. And I started doing the engineering, but then we started off slow, so we had other people doing that, and then I had to go out and start getting. I joined SMPS, which was a marketing associate, because I didn't know how to market. So I had to figure out I'm a good person to go out and ask a lot of questions and just figure out what I don't know and then start going. So.
And that's hard. We had another client in a long time ago, and she made that kind of pie chart analogy. There's the things I know,
right.
The things I know I don't know, and there's just some things I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't even know it exists in this field, you know, and I had the fortunate luck to go to a business school. I majored in entrepreneurship and marketing, and kind of working in business, it's really been this wonderful tie-in. But there's other people here who they have the photography skills, they have the video skills, and I have to learn that other side. So I think either way you kind of have benefit, but I really wish more people got business, you know, classes in college.
But I just went to the community college, and they had a 4-night session just to teach you the very, very basics. And then I think that was my foundation, and then you kind of learn on the job, I think, is a lot of it. And then just figuring out that you got to pay your bills first and your people, and then you get to reap the rewards some years later. You know, you might not get a paycheck for a while, or if you do, you take a smaller one to make sure that you're covering all your expenses. Right. Yeah.
So how was that kind of starting the business and getting the funding? Because financing a business is a big deal. How did you go about funding it? Was it investors, loans, grants? What was kind of your method of getting it up and going?
Well, getting up and going, it was pretty easy. We only needed a computer and a printer, so I borrowed.
That's really nice.
Yeah, yes. And I think because I was part of that engineering firm, they let me borrow their software. Otherwise, we would have had a lot more issues. But I borrowed $3,000 from my dad for the computer and the printer, and surely after the first job I could pay that back, which was really nice. And then from there I just kept all the money in the business, and we just kept growing very slowly. And then our first contract, it was very nice because the guy paid us before he even got his invoice. So he kept us, you know, he knew that we needed the money, so he kept us going. Because he hated the paperwork, but he knew he had to pay us. So it's kind of funny. So, so we didn't have to take out a lot of loans. When we bought our first building, we took out an SBA loan to do that. But that was, I kept all the revenue back in the company, most of it. So I had room to grow. So.
And how's that process getting an SBA loan? Because I know most people hear about it. If you're in the startup world, you know they exist. What is kind of that process of if you want to get one, what do you have to do, or what are the qualifications for that?
Man, you're going back so many years.
Testing your knowledge today.
15 years, yeah. I know it when I got engaged with SCORE, so I knew I could go back there. And then I think my realtor really helped me because we were looking for a building to buy, and they kind of recommended that. And then I got tied into St. Louis, and I was trying to remember what that organization is. It's a small business organization that anybody can, I can't remember what the acronym was.
Yeah,
but that's, and then they just kind of walked us through it. And since we've kept so much money into our company, we had some money and proven record, so it wasn't that hard to get that loan.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I feel like funding is just that one piece that can really be, it's challenging. And you do need money to start a business. Sometimes you're really lucky and you only need a computer and a printer, but other times it's a lot more that kind of goes behind it.
And and then we haven't had any problems with our banking either because we've kept so much money in the company.
That's great.
That's right. I mean, not so much, but we've always had a rainy day fund. So then the bank's like that. So then they'll give you a line of credit, and then we just have been able to, go from there. So.
And awesome. And you've grown phenomenally well. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So engineering is a pretty male-dominated field. How has that been as a woman operating in that field, especially one that owns her own business? Do you feel like you have to constantly kind of prove your expertise, or has it been, how is that dynamic?
It was kind of interesting. For the first, 15 years, it was, since they named the program that gives you those funds that sets aside as a disadvantaged business enterprise. And I felt like they always thought that D stand for dumb because the disadvantage, they thought I was dumb or disadvantaged. So it was coming over that. And then it just constantly telling them, yes, we could do it. And now our reputation, it's like, okay, you're our go-to. It's easy. But it was hard to get them to understand and know that we were since there was a lot of companies that weren't quality based, and so it was. But I think every time I was in school, I mean, I'm a tomboy through and through. So I only realized in school when we broke up into 3 or 4 people that I was the only girl. So I was like, I am the only one. Yeah. It was never a barrier for me because I loved playing with the guys anyway. So it didn't really matter. I mean, because that's who my friends were. So I never really, for me, I didn't seem I just did what I had to do as opposed to looking at, there's no women here.
And that's interesting because I played basketball growing up, and a lot of times it was you get forced to play with the guys in the gym, and you're just around guys a lot. And I think you get so comfortable in that dynamic, and I feel like you would be the same way until you step back in moments where it says disadvantage. Right. Or you kind of realize, oh, wait, I'm a woman, and, that puts me at a disadvantage. I don't like that they use that term either.
Though I don't know that we would be as successful without that program. I don't think back in the day when I came out in the 90s, and I don't think they would have even given us a chance. They would have. Then I would have had to fight really hard to make my way in this world. But since that program was there and they had to use us, they had to figure out how to do it. And I think it's a good program, except for the name, and then it's very hard to overcome that, I guess. Yeah.
So for other women who are in male-dominated fields, or maybe just struggling with confidence as a women business owner, what advice do you have for them?
You got to be true to yourself. I mean, and I don't go in headstrong. I just go in with the knowledge that we're a good firm and we can help them. It took me a long time for myself to realize that they needed us, that they do need us. We do have a place, and as long as I can provide quality, then I don't have to feel bad that I'm using this program. So I think you got to be true to yourself. I think you got to just know that you can do it and don't go over the top. And I don't know. I mean, I think you always got to be true to yourself. And I'm never, like you said, I didn't even realize that, half the time I was playing in a male-dominated field. I mean, that's just who I was. Yeah.
Staying true to yourself we hear that voice all the time. And you hear it, and you're like, that's great. But it just is that reminder, like, you have all the things you need, and as long as you just trust in that skill and really just trust in yourself, I think it can take a little bit of time to kind of, you almost have to prove it to yourself. And in your field, it's very fortunate in engineering. You literally get to see the fruits of your labor with the projects and with the feedback you get. But so also I wanted to talk back, and you kind of went back talking about the accountant and hiring a lawyer. You grew this firm to have a lot of employees. How do you know kind of when you're in that startup phase and maybe looking at, I actually might need some help now. When is it the time to hire someone onto your startup?
I had an accounting right away because I knew I didn't do that. And we switched accounting firms probably 3 to 4 years into it because I just remember they weren't doing something, and then we heard. So you kind of in those first startup years, you gotta listen, and then you take those silly phone calls. And I won't take any banker calls now because I love my banker. I'm not switching banks. I love where I'm at, and they understand me. So, but in those first few years, you gotta figure out, oh, they're not telling me that. This is what I need to know. And then you gotta feel that, especially with a lawyer. Now we have so many different lawyers. I'm like, I need a different lawyer for that now. Right. So you gotta kind of feel when you need those things, when you don't know what you don't know. And then I think right around 10 is when we started feeling, oh my goodness, we're going to need some additional overhead help. And then you saw it again at 20, and then at 50, and now at 100, we're seeing that we kind of can plan for it because you can kind of see how many people you need. Oh, now I need another person. But in those first few years, I guess when things are not falling into place, you go, oh, I might need some help here, And I did a lot of the marketing, and the first thing I gave away was the invoicing. And so then, because somebody came up and said, hey, you probably always think where your time is better spent. Yeah. And if it's not your thing, then find somebody to do it, because they'll do it better because that is their thing.
Yeah, and why waste your time on something where you're like, I'm struggling. I know someone can do this better,
and they're
better
probably cheaper because they can do it faster. Yeah. So
well, and that's so interesting because I think we think it's cheaper to do everything ourselves because we're not hiring somebody else. But we forget the amount of time that takes, you taking time away from other activities that would be better well spent bringing money into the business. There are all those dynamics that really it might just be better to hire somebody else to do it.
But it is great. I realize now after being in it that you need to know all the facets of that company first to have that foundation so you have credibility when you gave it away and they're doing it wrong. It's like I did that. I know that that's not the way this happens. So you got to know all of it, but don't hold on to it too long. Is all I'm saying. Yeah.
So how do you know an employee's right to work in a startup or even just a growing business? Because that is a different environment from kind of corporate America where it's very structured. You know, it's fast paced. It's changing. People are coming and going. How did you know that somebody would be a good fit for your company?
I don't know. I had a really good gut instinct, unfortunately. I mean, that's great. Fortunately for CDI. And now I've taught, I don't know if I've taught it, but there's others that do come into the hiring thing. I could just sense it if they were going to fit or not. And most of it, we have, I mean, it's crazy to think about. We just had a team member celebrate 15 years. And I think we got a couple coming on 20. And then I think, and now, I mean, it's, they've grown with us and they've just been good team members that have, it's crazy because we were like, oh, what are we going to do for 5 years? You know, and we just gave them a pen because that's all we could afford. And I'm just like, oh, that's all we give now is a pen for 5 years? Yeah. And I'm like, well, back then that was a huge deal.
Yeah, exactly.
So now we got to come up and figure out what we're going to do on 20 because there's a few afford. I know, it's just crazy how time flies. And I think you got to trust your gut on, and I keep saying that, on who's going to fit in your culture and who's not. And if they're not, we had a few missteps, then we had to let some team members go. It wasn't right for them and it wasn't right for us because you cannot let a team member that is not part of your culture stay on longer. It just hurts your company.
Oh, it impacts it.
Yes, it does. I had no idea until they're gone. You're like, oh my gosh, that's what we should have done. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I know I've done a lot of research. I like to research everybody before they come on. And you have talked so much about you creating this work culture and really this being kind of more, I don't want to say purpose driven, but it does focus on the well-being, the lifestyle of your employees and your clients. Right. How has that been beneficial, maybe kind of economically? Because I think people don't understand the economic benefit of kindness in their business, but how have you seen that really be an advantage to you?
Well, it's a testament that we're over 100 team members now. I mean, and we're getting people that have been in the industry 15, 20 years come knocking on our door and saying, I want to join you. So you get really good team members, which means then you get really good clients, and then you get really good projects that you get to work on. And I think our clients are seeing that we do things differently too, that we it's not about the dollar, it's about the project. And we've never worried about dollars. We've only worried about our team members and what the project is. We've never went back on somebody and said, oh my gosh, you lost, $10,000 on that project. What'd you do wrong? And we're like, oh, okay, we lost it. What do we do? And let's move on. Right. So we don't really focus on that. We focus on the people. We focus on our projects, and the money's always come. I don't know how to not do anything differently, but I think that's really what you have to do. And then the people that grab your vision, I think we're not the top dollar paying, but we're right in range with everybody else, but we're getting those people that are tired of just working 50 hours a week and not even getting anybody saying, hey, way to go. And we're really team orientated, and we really, in the past years I had to learn how to delegate and let things go. And now our new leaders are they have to feel that, and learn how to let things go. And it's fun to watch them because I'm like, that's what I did so many years ago, and I didn't even know it. And now they're struggling through it. I know, and it's neat. I'm like, it'll be okay, just let it go. Yeah. As long as you teach them well, and then our culture will stay through. And that's the thing we're struggling with right now. They always think that I'm the culture, and I'm not anymore. I can't be the culture. It's all of us. So I'm trying to switch that. Yeah.
And I just, kindness for me is something that just gets so overlooked. And I really feel like even with people that we've worked with, it's just like the little detail, writing the name on a board, people love it, or kind of giving something at the end. Like, it's all those things that leave such a lasting impression. And the kindness, for me, I think it just is that glue that holds it together. When you know you can rely on your employees, when you know that your coworker's going to be there for you, even management makes a huge difference.
One of our biggest values is mutual trust and respect. And I didn't, before I used to talk about another one of our values, and I thought, well, that one's just there. But now it has really risen to, and I even listened to some of the young team members, and then I listened to some of the older ones, and one of them said it was like, I can just go and talk to anybody, and I know they'll talk to me, you know, and just that they're not overlooked as even a one-year engineer. Everybody. And I think that's the other thing we do really well is we treat everybody like a professional. You went to school, or you know your job. It doesn't matter if you didn't go to school, because we still all treat you like you know what you're doing. And that's the big thing. Just treat everybody like they know what they're doing, and then they'll help anybody else out. Right. So it's the kindness and that mutual trust and respect that you respect them because they know what they're doing. Yeah.
And you also talked about servant leadership and other interviews, because I did my research. And you mentioned training other people to kind of be in those leadership roles. How do you pass on that skill to them so that they can kind of continue to build that culture in the organization?
We're working on that, and I think it's a lot lead by example. Because I don't, we're figuring that out, because I want to make sure that they know, but a lot of our leaders have been with us, 10 years, so they've seen me. And then there's a few that's new, but they get it right away, so that's why they're leaders. And I think it's just leading by example, and then also having those conversations when you see something, hey, well, that probably wasn't the right thing to say because you are in leadership now. You gotta look at this differently. So and just having those tough conversations and cutting it off when it happens, and not, hey, do you remember 3 months ago when you said this?
Right. Yeah. So would you say there really is that true difference between leadership and management then?
We lead people and manage projects. And that's where
love that.
That's drawn in the sand. We say that all the time, because I don't want to manage people. I mean, that's not our job. It's to lead them and show them. And I think that's what's also helped us be successful, that we just manage projects. You manage things, you don't manage people.
I love that. Yeah. I'm going to have to write that down. That was so good. That was so good. So we kind of were talking beforehand. Now you're moving kind of into this position where you can take a vacation in the summer, and you kind of have really reached this point of success in this business and growing this. Looking back at yourself when you started, however many years ago, we won't say, what advice, if you could sit down with her and give her a piece of advice before she started on this big journey, what would you say to her?
And somebody told me, and I thought they were totally, I don't need to worry about that. In a lot of ways, I wish I would have worried about the end game. How am I going to get out? Because now it's more difficult. And if I would have maybe structured, but it's so hard, because just recently I'm like going, oh my gosh, this is a real company. I mean, it's a real thing with stocks. I'm like, who cares about the stocks? The lawyer asked, how many stocks do you want to have? And I'm like, I don't know. What difference does it make? Give me whatever. He gave me 200. I'm like, I don't care. But if I would have set it up differently on the way out, it might be a whole lot easier to figure that out. And I don't, it depends on our growth strategy. Our company was never to sell it and make the highest dollar. And we're not. So we have to figure out now how to transition to the next phase and keep it going, because we have all these great people. And that's my biggest thing now, is try to think about what is your legacy? What do you want it to be? If you want to sell it to, and make the most money, that's fine. Just know that and gear your company towards that. But if it's not, then you got to think about, do I let people have stock earlier so then it's not as a big thing when I own 100%? Now, how do I get out of this thing? Yeah. And you have to. I mean, I'm not going to live forever, and so now we're starting those conversations, and it's a lot more difficult.
So what would be maybe something that's like a general advice, kind of for all fields, for when they're setting up their business, at some point, if they do want to sell it off, or if they want it to get acquired, what would you recommend that they can do as they're setting it up that would help maybe ease that process later down the line?
I wouldn't know, because I didn't do it.
Okay. And that's good.
And maybe, talk to the lawyer that's setting up your company, and just have those conversations. So, hey, what do I do if I want to go A, B, and C? Whatever that transition is. And they would probably be able to help, but I never asked those questions, And we were an S Corp, we were C Corp first, and then I got other advice from somebody else, and they said, no, you should be an S Corp. And so then we turned into an S Corp 5 years later, and maybe that's when I probably should have started asking some of those questions. But you're just so in your head trying to just make it, you know, that you.
Oh my gosh.
And then now all of a sudden here you are. I don't know if it's good advice. I don't know how you do it, but maybe if it's conscious in your brain, you'll keep thinking about it. And as you grow, you know, maybe, you know, at the 5-year and the 10-year, you say, okay, I really got to start thinking about what is this, or is it in a family business? So what does that look like? And do you want your kids in it? And I never really thought about it. And now I'm, you know, my kids are 25 and 23 and 17. I'm like, oh, maybe I should think about this.
Yeah.
I always hated it when people come up to me in the company and said, oh, is Tori going to take it over? Because she's our only daughter. And I'm like, no, why would I? You know, but they just want to know that there's stability in the company, not that it was going to be nepotism. They just wanted to know it was going to carry. And I was like, well, no, she's not going to, you know, but then I realized, oh, that's why. And they know if it's in the family, it's going to stay the same, hopefully, or the large part of it. So then I was like, oh, okay. But,
So is Tori taking over? No, I'm kidding.
She's 17, and I would never put that pressure on her. But it would be. She's a lot like me, and she would do a great job. But I would never put that on her.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's hard because when you start, you're like, I just need to survive. Like, I need to make it to like this next point, or just have money. It's so hard to think about that 5 years down the line. So I think it's really great advice to say these are good conversations to have, you know, and ask all the questions in the beginning. Are there things that maybe you would advise people to ask lawyers or to ask accountants or maybe even just a mentor that would really set them up for success?
Maybe I would find somebody in their industry that is towards their end, that started their own business, and how they are, you know, I have a really trusted person that I call up and say, hey, how are you doing this? And then she walked me through what she was doing, especially because she's another women-owned firm. And so that is very helpful as well, is to have somebody that you can trust and talk to. And it doesn't always have to be the same person. You can change along the way as well.
Right. Even just having someone who has more experience, you know, who can just pass that. It's like, let me take it. I'll take all the wisdom, you know, I just want to know so I can maybe not make the same mistakes.
Or think the questions to ask. You know, the questions they're asking now, you might be, oh, I might be starting to think about that.
So as a woman, for me, women entrepreneurship is really unique because I think there are different things that you go through that men don't have. So how was that? You had 3 kids and you had kids as you're growing this business. What advice do you have for women who are newly parents or maybe are expectant mothers? How do they just balance everything and make it work? Or maybe they don't, but
I think it's integration. You know, the one benefit of having my husband involved is that he understood when I wasn't home at dinner because I did most of the client relations, building the business, so he knew that, you know, he had to pick up the pieces. Right. And originally I got up in the morning and I loved it. You know, I loved getting up early in the morning and going into work.
Good for you.
Yeah, I know. I was a morning person and he was a night one. And so I would get there at 6 o'clock and then I would have to leave at 2:30, and there's a lot of business that happened from 2:30 to 5. That I was trying to do, I'd pick up the kids and try to do homework and try to make dinner, and then business is calling me. And then I would get really frustrated, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and then I was no good for anybody. And then we finally said, oh, for our family unit to work, we had to switch. So he went in early, and then I stayed late. And then it was much better because I wasn't trying to be a mom and answer a business call, because the 2 to 5 is usually not something that, and then after 5 is never any good.
Oh, no, yeah.
But I still had those, but it just, you have to figure out how that works in the family unit. And I think if I had to go back, I wish I would have taken more time and reaped some of the successes, but we were so busy building that we might have not have taken a vacation every year. And then I look back and going, well, we did it every other, but I think every year would have been better for my kids, for us to get away.
And it's hard because you just don't know when you're in it, you know, until sometimes you step back. And I think that's why it's great to hear advice like that for people who are, oh, well, maybe I should prioritize this. Maybe I should build in a vacation. And kids are
they are, and then
tricky.
I was telling you, my daughter, she's 7 or 6 years behind my other 2 boys, and I always say that I could have fooled myself into thinking that my 8 and 6-year-old didn't need me, because, you know, they went to school, they came home, they played outside, they didn't really need me, but that newborn baby made me go home every night. So that really set up our culture that we 40 hours. Sometimes you have to put in a few more, but we said, that's it. You know, we don't want you to have, we know that there's life outside of work, and that really set up our culture. And without her, I don't know, I could see it, because now she's 17, and I can see I would have been thrown I would have stayed at work all the time and never would have went home. So she is so I advise, if you're working too hard, have another kid.
I think that's the first anyone has said that ever. So that's on camera. We got it recorded. But no, I think that's really interesting, because a lot of people think when you start a business, you're like working 80 hours a week and you're just like always in it. But you said you kind of kept it at 40.
Well, I mean, that's what I put on my timesheet. I'm sure
Wiggle
it was
room,
more for me, a little bit more. But I mean, it still wasn't. You know, I wasn't there all the time. I didn't work Saturdays and Sundays. I had to be home, because I was that mother of that little newborn. And then from then on, once she got older, I mean, we just kept that same.
At that point, did you have a really good team that could kind of help you keep your hours at that kind of, you know, 40-ish, or?
Probably, yeah. I mean, because I let go of my engineering. So I was only doing business not only, I shouldn't say only, because that's a big part of the business.
Right.
But the day-to-day answering the clients' questions and all that kind of stuff was more on the team members and not necessarily me. So it wasn't the day-to-day things that needed to be done. It was just growing the business. So, and then they, you know, we try to keep our work manageable, so they didn't. And I don't know, maybe they would tell me that we didn't. Maybe, you know, I could have had rose color, but nobody was there, so I don't think that they were working. You know, I think they really took that to heart too.
Yeah, and that's great, because you overwork your employees, they start to resent you. You know, so it is that fine line where you kind of just, how are we going to make it all work? And it sounds from everything you've said that you've done a phenomenal
We're trying, and now with the new infrastructure bill, it's going to be interesting. I keep telling them we have to figure out, and that's where we got a couple meetings set, not on how to say no, but just pick the projects that we want and don't overcommit ourselves, because I don't want that. I mean, that's not who we are, and we don't. It's not like we don't need the money, but I don't want that to drive us.
Right. Because I think then you make riskier decisions. It's not that thoughtful, kind of well-planned.
But it's going to be hard, because there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of projects, and a lot of people are going to be saying, how are we going to get this done? And we just got to be mindful of that. And I think if we keep it in our forefront, then we'll probably say yes one too many times, but then we'll say, okay, we got to back off and just figure that out. So I don't know.
And you will.
I hope so.
Yeah. So for women who maybe are a little bit nervous, or they're scared about just taking that plunge of starting their business or moving to that next level, you were at that phase where you had to kind of make that leap to start your business. What advice would you give to them to just go for it?
Just go for it. I mean, you know, we were at a crossroads. I remember sitting back, because we were in St. Charles, and in order to do more business, we had to get into St. Louis County. And it was like, okay, we can stay in our business or in our basement and do, you know, whatever we wanted to do, or do we take that next step? And we decided that we should take that next step. And I'm really happy that we did, because I'm hoping that especially some of our team members that have never worked anywhere else, and we're starting with a whole bunch of them now, that they can never go home or never say that they've never had a bad boss, or they, you know, my really big thing is, if they go home and kick the dog, then they're upset with their spouse, then life is not good. So I want to keep that. So then I feel like I've done my, and if you have that drive to give somebody a great place for people to work, and they don't, I mean, I mean, that's the best thing that's what drives me today. And then, so if that's what is driving you, or if it is money, you know, or the sense of that you can do it, and you can. I mean, just know that you can. I don't know.
Just believe in yourself.
Yeah, really. And just if you have that drive, you know it's in you. You can do it. I mean, and just, you know, find people along the way to talk to, and just know that it'll be okay. Even if, you know, we had to restructure a company just a couple years ago. And I was paralyzed with fear. I thought, this is, because it was beginning to be a $10 million company. And I was just like, I was like, okay, this is when I'm really going to screw up. This is going to break the whole company. We're going to go out of business. Up until this point, I really didn't think about it. But this really, I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like, you know, we had 70 team members. And if I screw up, this could all go away. But I never take that on, because they'll find other jobs, you know. So don't think that you're that if you screw up, life is over. It's not. You'll figure your way out. But it took me a long time to realize that I've made a lot of hard choices to get here. We've done pretty good. So I must know something.
Right.
So let's just go for it and do it. And it was the best thing. And it was it's January, right before COVID. If we would have made that pivot, there's no way we would have made it through COVID.
Thank goodness.
No, yeah.
Gosh, it's interesting. We've heard a lot of stories where people are like, if I didn't do this before COVID, we would have gone out of business. And it's just... I don't know. I feel like women just have that gut instinct. You know,
I know. Trust it. It sometimes you don't trust it as much. And it took me a long time. It took me, I should say, almost 30 years to trust it. But trust it earlier. But I probably did along the way and didn't realize that's what I was doing. Yeah.
So if you could leave one imparting piece of advice, just like the best thing that you've got, or maybe it's not even just like this big life-changing piece of advice. Maybe it's something really simple, but it's really made an impact for you and your business or even personal life. What would you bestow on our members? I know that's a big ask. I know.
Right. I mean, we've been talking a lot about it. Is that trust in who you are, and just be true to yourself, and know that you can do it, and just don't let anybody get in your way. I mean, don't push people out of the way. Bring them into your circle, but I'm a very humble person, so I never really counted the numbers, and even to this day, people ask, we do have 100 people, but it wasn't about that. It was about, for me, it was about providing a great place for people to work and never have a bad boss. So, I mean, if I can leave that legacy, I mean, that's what's important to me.
Yeah. And I think you've done that.
Yeah,
From everything I've
so.
heard, I think you've done that. Yeah. All right. So what is kind of up next for you in the business plans or even personal life?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out that transition, and I'm trying to move from the founder to being in the background, and that's what I would really like to do. And I keep trying to set that up and pulling myself out of things and letting them go, and maybe step back in when I hear something. But because I know every time I'm on a meeting, if I'm there, it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut. But I'm trying not to attend many, and then just maybe attend every other one, so then I can say, well, this is what I thought about.
Right.
So, and for me to realize that I do have some wisdom to give to these people, and just let them know, hey, this is what I think, and then eventually they'll get it. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to go from founder to in the background and figure out who the next leaders are. It's kind of fun because
exciting.
I think it's fun to watch the young kids. I mean, they got much more energy, and I'm just like, no, I've done there, been that. I don't want to do that anymore,
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure that out and hoping that will work.
Yeah. So is there anything that you wish you could have talked about in this interview, or maybe a question I didn't ask that you'd really like to touch on?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
And if they have any questions, maybe
for sure. So do we have any questions or anything from our members? Okay. Well, this is always I'm trying to incorporate. This is going to be the last question of every interview, starting kind of from the last one we just did, but where she's in business, what does she's in business mean to you personally? Doesn't have to be what we do specifically, but what does she's in business mean?
She in business, just people or women in business, is that, I think that we curate better companies, but we have to have our male counterparts. I don't think that we can just win this world and we'll be a better place if all of it was women. I think there's a balance between both of us. A lot of things that I haven't said is that we have that yin and yang between my husband and I. I'm that kind of bringing that female touch, but man, every time I brought something, he would say, well, let's make sure they know how to save in their 401k. Let's bring people in to talk about saving, because he would love to know that everyone, and we have like a 99% people that give back to that are involved in our 401k, and I think that's his balance behind him. So I think we bring a lot to the table, and I think we change the way companies are run and bring that softer side, but we also need our male counterparts to be there with us too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. We hype women up, but we're inclusive of everybody. So.
Right. Yeah. I think we just got to bring, recognize everybody's skill sets and let them all be, who they are. Yeah. So.
Well, on that wonderful note, Vicki, it's been an absolute wonder to Yes, it's been wonderful to interview you today. I know I've been talking so much this morning, but it's been wonderful. You've given such great advice. I hope all of y'all who've been watching have just really gained some bites of wisdom, and it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah. It's sunny on a bright, rainy day.
Yes. I'm happy this is a good start to your morning. Awesome. Well, we'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.
Bye.